All right, get ready to dive into general expansion homebrew content
Mm.
because this is, well, this one is something
It
else.
really is, yeah.
This creator took homebrew to a whole new level. We got
Mhm.
Stargate in here, a little D&D, even some Starfinder vibes.
Yeah, it's like they rated their favorite sci-fi and fantasy shelves and said, okay, let's make this into an RPG.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can tell they're not just like slapping ideas together. There's actual thought put into how these elements blend together.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Like a good chef, they've got all these different ingredients, but they know exactly how to mix them to make something new and exciting.
Okay, so speaking of exciting, can we talk about these clayable races? I mean, Wraith hybrids. Right out the gate, I was hooked.
I know, right? Talk about a recipe for drama. I mean, you're literally playing a character who's torn between their human side and this, predatory wraith nature.
It's like that classic vampire trope, the struggle for control, the hunger.
Yeah.
But here, you're not relegated to some shadowy corner. You're part of the team.
Exactly. So you've got this life drain ability, which, okay, that's pretty standard Wraith stuff. But then there's this vampiric nature mechanic that really adds a layer of moral complexity.
Right, because it's not just about you anymore. Do you risk your allies to sate your hunger? I mean, what would you even DO in that situation? It makes you think.
It does. It adds this whole other dimension to decision making that I think a lot of players would find really engaging.
And then, of course, you've got the Asgard.
Yeah.
Because what's a good sci-fi homebrew without some big-brained aliens,
Mm.
right?
I had to have them. And they nailed it. They've got those big brains bonuses for anything tech-related, which makes total sense. But then, to balance it out, there's the weak body trait.
Yeah, it makes them glass cannon in a way. All that intellect, but one good hit, and it's game over.
Exactly. So you can't just play them as these untouchable geniuses. You've got to be strategic, think defensively, which I think adds a fun layer of challenge, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It plays into that classic Asgard archetype, brilliant strategists,
Mm.
but not exactly known for their hand-to-hand combat skills.
Exactly. Now, on top of that, there are even more Stargate-inspired races. The Sirican, for example. And man, are they tough. They've got natural armor, like walking tanks.
Oh, yeah, and the Urandan breeders, too.
Yeah.
All about speed and tech. Definitely a force to be reckoned with.
It's really cool how the creator pulled from the lore, but also reimagined these races within this new game system.
Yeah, it's not just about, oh, I recognize that alien. It's about what makes them mechanically interesting, too.
Yeah,
Well,
totally.
actually, it's a good segue to the half-ancient race.
Right.
This one feels like it's playing with that whole chosen one trope, but with a sci-fi twist.
Right. Instead of some ancient prophecy, you have this bloodline tied to this super advanced ancient civilization.
And they can activate ancient technology, which,
Yeah.
I mean, come on, that's just...
Imagine the possibilities, right? You could stumble upon some ancient artifact that no one else can even figure out, but your character, bam, they just get it.
I can already see players leaning into that chosen one role play. Maybe with a little bit of, oh, this old thing. Yeah, my great-great-great-grandparent taught me how to use that.
A little bit of an ego boost never hurt anyone, right? And then things take a turn for the familiar, but still very cool, with the D&D inspired human variants.
I thought this was a really clever way to bring in those more classic fantasy races, but give them a sci-fi twist.
Right. It's like, what if dwarves and gnomes weren't just fantasy creatures? What if they were actually the result of humans adapting to like really extreme environments over thousands of years?
I love that idea. It's not just a copy-paste from D&D.
Yeah.
It's like they took that inspiration and made it their own. And speaking of adaptations, the cyborgs, that's next level stuff right there.
Yeah, talk about embracing technology. You're basically a walking testament to human ingenuity, but also to, well, the potential downsides of relying on tech too much.
Because, yeah, you're resistant to damage, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But you need engineering to heal. That's a trade-off right there.
Definitely. It's like high risk, high reward. You're incredibly durable. But if you don't have someone who knows their way around a circuit board, you could be in trouble.
I'm really liking how this whole section really showcases just what you can do with Homebrew. It's not just about tweaking a few rules.
It's about looking at those familiar tropes, those classic races and archetypes, and finding new ways to make them exciting.
Okay, so we've seen some really imaginative races, but this Homebrew content doesn't just stop there.
Right, you got the who you can play, but then there's the how you actually play them, right?
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting with these convince and interrogation encounter mechanics.
Oh yeah, this is where things go beyond just rolling for initiative and hoping for the best.
Because how often do you actually have to talk your way out of a situation or, get information from someone in an RPG.
Right, it happens all the time, but it often boils down to a single dice roll. This homebrew content changes that.
Big time.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with this really cool Moxie system they've got. Did you like how that worked?
Oh, I loved it. It's like your character's reserve of social energy, you know?
Okay, so walk me through it, because I'll be honest, I was a little unsure about it at first. But then when you see how it works in practice,
It just clicks. Imagine this. You're trying to convince a shopkeeper to give you a better deal. Instead of just rolling persuasion, you have this pool of Moxie points.
it's like a social currency almost.
Exactly. And you can spend these points to improve your chances of success.
So, like, do I go all in, spend it all at once, hoping I can convince this guy to give me the deal of a lifetime?
Well, you could, but what if the conversation takes a turn? What if you need some Moxie later on? It's all about resource management.
Ooh, I see. So I can't just rely on my charisma all the time. I have to be smart about it.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you've got the different NPC dispositions to take into account.
Right. Because not everyone responds to the same approach. Like, you can't just logic your way through every conversation.
Nope. Some NPCs are driven by logic, others by sympathy, some are just plain brutal.
So you have to adjust your tactics accordingly. It's like they took those classic social encounters and said, how do we make this feel real? How do we make players really think about their approach?
And they nailed it. And if you think that's intense, the interrogation scenarios take things to a whole other level.
Okay, so before we get there, can we just take a moment to appreciate how much detail went into this? Like, even just the fact that they have different NPC dispositions.
It's amazing. You can tell they put a lot of thought into how to make these social encounters feel distinct and engaging.
Right, because it's those moments, those interactions
Yeah.
that really bring an RPG to life.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about fighting monsters. It's about interacting with the world and its inhabitants.
Absolutely. And with the interrogation stuff, they really capture that sense of tension and uncertainty. Like you're trying to break down this suspect. They've got their determination points representing how tough they are to crack.
And then you have your own willpower, right?
Yeah.
Like, how much pressure can you handle before you snap?
Exactly. And it becomes this push and pull. Do you go in hard, risking the suspect shutting down completely?
Or do you play it cool, trying to build rapport,
Yeah.
but then maybe they're just messing with you, trying to buy time?
Right. And that's where the threshold mechanic comes in. If you push too hard too fast, the subject might clam up.
Or worse, they start feeding you lies.
Exactly. So you're constantly trying to read them, looking for those subtle tells, trying to figure out if they're being truthful.
It's like they took those classic interrogation scenes from movies and TV shows, and they found a way to make them playable.
It's brilliant. And it's a perfect example of how this homebrew content goes above and beyond to create a truly immersive and engaging RPG experience.
Honestly, it's kind of mind-blowing how much this homebrew creator packed into this thing. Like, we've covered the races, those encounter mechanics, and we haven't even touched on all the other cool stuff.
Yeah, this document just keeps on giving.
It really does. Like,
Yeah.
they even went deep on technology, which, can be kind of a make-or-break element in sci-fi RPGs.
Absolutely. Get it right, and it adds a whole other layer of depth and realism to the game.
Exactly. And I think they nailed it with this whole tech levels system.
Yeah, it's not just window dressing either. It's actually integrated into the mechanics of the game, which I really appreciated.
So, like, trying to fix a Starship engine is going to be a lot more complicated than, say, patching up a hole in your shirt.
Exactly. Different tools, different knowledge, different levels of risk involved.
It reminds me of that time, I think I was playing a mechanic in this cyberpunk game, and I tried to hotwire this super high-tech car with just like a paperclip at a dream.
Oh, I've been there.
Spoiler alert, it did not end well.
Yeah, this system kind of forces you to think about those limitations. You can't just be a jack of all trades when it comes to tech.
Right. You have to specialize. Like, maybe you're amazing with low-tech stuff, which, still has its place even in a futuristic setting.
Absolutely. Or maybe you're the person everyone calls when the ancient alien artifact starts malfunctioning.
Okay, but that sounds kind of dangerous, doesn't it? Like messing with stuff you don't fully understand.
High risk, high reward, right? Which actually ties into another cool mechanic, the carrying bulk system.
Oh, yeah, I like that one. No more bottomless backpacks.
Exactly. It forces you to make choices. Like, do you really need to carry 20 different weapons, or can you make do with a few essentials?
Because, let's be real, in a lot of RPGs, inventory management goes right out the window.
Totally. But this system brings back that element of realism, that need to prioritize and strategize.
And it can lead to some really interesting decisions in the heat of the moment, too. Like, you're out of ammo, the big bad is closing in, but your backpack is already full of loot. What do you
Well,
do?
exactly. It adds a layer of tension and urgency to those decisions.
And on top of that, this homebrew content even goes into detail about downtime activities.
Yeah, because what do you do when you're not out there saving the galaxy, right?
Right. And it's not just about resting and recovering. This system actually lets you do some really cool stuff during downtime. Like, you can hone a specific ability score.
Exactly. Instead of just passively regaining hit points, you could spend a few days training, maybe even getting a temporary bonus for the next session.
So, like, my character, who's usually kind of clumsy, could take a crash course in acrobatics and actually stick the landing for once.
Exactly. It adds this whole other layer of character progression and customization.
I love it. It's like they thought of everything. Even, and I never thought I'd say this about a language system in an RPG, but even the languages are cool.
I know, right? You wouldn't think languages would be that exciting, but they found a way to make them matter.
It's not just about being able to ask where the bathroom is in 3 different alien dialects.
Nope, it's about unlocking secrets, deciphering ancient texts, maybe even immersing yourself in a completely different culture.
It's like they took that one scene from every sci-fi movie where the linguist saves the day by deciphering some alien code, and they made it playable.
Exactly. And that's really what this whole homebrew package is all about, isn't it? It's about taking those familiar tropes, those classic sci-fi and fantasy elements, and finding new and exciting ways to bring them to life in a tabletop RPG.
And I think that's something we can all get behind. So, there you have it, general expansion homebrew content. If you're looking for a way to inject some serious creativity and innovation into your next sci-fi RPG campaign, this is it. And as always, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Until next time.